So as of today, the day of this recording, the SAG-Aftra strike is still ongoing, and it's been many, many weeks since their last time at the table to negotiate.
Lawrence, I was driving past a streaming service that rhymes with Netflix the other day, and I saw this person who, they were striking, of course, and picketing and all the yay and honking. I'm honking as I go by and screaming support, And I see there's somebody out there who's kind of, I don't want to say wrangling, but wrangling everybody. And they were amazing. You know what I mean? Like everything wrapped up in one, a leader, a cheerleader, a
producer,
just encouraging a producer, all kinds of things. And that's a strike captain.
That is a strike captain. And guess what? We have one with us today.
I know. I'm so excited because this is like talking to a producer of the strike, let's call it.
He's an actor. He's a jobber. He's what he calls himself a jobber, a working class actor. And he's really knowledgeable about VR and AI. And we're going to have an amazing chat. His name is Brendan Bailey. And we're going to get into it with him. Christian, hope you got your drink.
Yeah, I'm excited about this episode. I have my drink, so roll the intro.
Welcome to the Producers Happy Hour with your hosts, Sister Christian and Lawrence Lewis.
We're two producers with over 20 years of experience each, chatting over drinks about what it means
and what it takes to be a good producer.
Join us for insightful interviews and informative show topics that will help you get through your toughest jobs,
biggest production challenges,
and most difficult clients. So grab a drink.
You're going to need it.
And let's get to it.
Because making shit
is hard.
Welcome, Brendan.
Thanks, friends.
We really appreciate your time with us because we know you're busy on the front lines with your SAG brothers and sisters and, of course, WGA as well. But I want to start by saying you have an amazing TikTok account with great content. That's where we found you. And if you all haven't seen Brendan on TikTok, you definitely need to check him out. He's at Brendan A. Bradley. And that's where we found you. And you're there extolling the realities of what is happening right now on the front lines. And I know we need to talk about AI, but first, I want to hear about the strike. And firstly, how did you become a strike captain?
Sure. I was out there with my sibling writer guild folks, May 2nd, showing up mostly at the Warner Brothers lot. I was a little partial to there first. And we actually did not have a strike system within SAG-Aftra. This is a real moment of union literacy and union solidarity and community. We are building the airplane as we fly it. And shit. Yeah. And as producers are wont to do.
I've been on that plane. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I've been on that plane. I've built that plane.
4 or 5
Came
times.
without all the pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Writers Guild captains nominated certain actors they'd seen on the line to kind of be the first wave of volunteers to get up a SAG-Aftra strike system with our incredible staff on the ground with us at the lots. And so I was assigned to Paramount, and we immediately figured out a way to onboard new volunteers, train them up across 5 different gates, and kind of take on this task of maneuvering the bodies and the literal cars that are trying to get through the bodies throughout the day.
Wow. That's amazing.
Right.
When you think about it, it's just not just showing up and picketing. There's so much more organization that goes into it. And just, because there's tons of people trying to get places and trying to strike, right?
Sure. It's a production.
Yeah. So, well, give us an update on the SAG strike too while we're here. What's Fran up to?
I don't know what Fran is up to. I wish I did. I mean,
okay.
I wish I could be in the room with Fran. She did come out to Paramount a couple times. But I think that we have the leadership folks really monitoring the situation of what's happening in the room where it happens, as you were. Even though the MPTP has not come back to the table, they are preparing that messaging and also activating people around the country. We can actually only strike a struck employer. So we can only go to the sites where the work would be occurring. So you can't just in Nebraska go out onto the line. And so they are trying to activate and encourage and get messaging out to members across the country and the globe while we are holding down those front lines here in town.
Yeah. When was the last time you guys spoke or been to the table?
I believe the negotiating committee last heard from them on July 14th. Their position is they can only negotiate with one group at a time. You know.
Like I can do 10 people's jobs at one time. I don't get it.
Look, as fellow producers,
Exactly.
I know that you only do one contract on a given day.
You know how many locals
yes,
I used to handle in New York alone? I'm sorry, but no.
Oh my God.
No.
So that is the current position. So now that they are meeting with the writers, they are not meeting with SAG-Aftra, and hopefully we will get back to the table at some point soon. But we are ready to come back to the table whenever they are ready to receive us.
Well, if nobody's talking, then how are you going to know? Like, how are you going to work it out? It just sounds
absolutely.
basic,
Well, absolutely. Well, and I think the thing that gets lost in the shuffle a little bit is that this isn't even a strike about the contract per se. This is a every 3 years scheduled negotiation. We all knew this was coming. Everyone should have been prepared. So while yes, there will always be the back and forth of any contract negotiation of what one side wants versus what the other side wants, this is just trying to get people to even sit down at the table. And if the writers are any indication, it took over 100 days of striking to get them to return to the table.
Interesting.
Yes. For the record, we are recording this at the end of August. So is that already 6 weeks or something like that?
Yes. It's been 46 days.
Oh my God.
Dang.
Lovely. Meanwhile, so many other sectors of the industry are hurting, right? Like prop houses are closing, costume shops are on the verge of closing, and countless other sectors of the industry are suffering, let alone the crew, IATSE and Teamsters and PAs and non-union people. But you mentioned communications and messaging, and that really is a really important factor because we have been seeing a lot of noise on the internet about, oh, you rich actors, trying to get a bunch of money for, you do one day of work and you want a bunch of money for that over and over again. And you are really good with your content, making sure that people understand that you are what you call a jobber. You go from job to job. You are not a rich celebrity.
Someday.
Tell us about that. How is that messaging so important?
Well, I think that messaging is important because so much you were referencing the community that is part of the ecosystem of Los Angeles or any film community. It is a collaborative art form. There's an incredible army of people that make any creative collaborative project come to life. And that often does not mean the shiny special stars that do also get the financing and help this machine run. Everyone has their value and their worth and their place within this. But most of these universes are populated by people that are just there for a job day to day. And that's both in front of and behind the camera. And so I've been very blessed to work on over 100 movies and TV shows and video games, just being kind of a small day player or week player here and there, and occasionally taking on a larger role. But really, there's integrity and honor in what was a robust middle-class life that not only created remarkable careers and kind of journeyman careers, but also propped up the economy and ecosystem of Tinseltown, of places like Los Angeles. These are people who bought houses, who funded the local economy, who go to the schools, who pay taxes here. And so when you start cutting out any middle class, you start diminishing the entire ecosystem around it, which is a conversation we're happening across the country with hot labor summer.
It sure is.
Yes.
Like the industry within the industry.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the whole residual system, which I know is so foreign for people that don't work in this industry. Like, oh, you get paid over and over again for work you did. You were on set for 8 hours and get paid over and over again. But that is... It's of course usage of your likeness for a product that is continuing to make lots of money for a certain sector of people. But that is how our jobs aren't 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months like other contract jobs. They might be a day. And if for you to be available for all the things that go around that day, the wardrobe fitting, a table read, all these different little bits and bobs, that residual system is in place to make this a sustainable business. Otherwise, if that's all you get is your one day, no one's going to be able to afford to do that. So
sure. Or you have to change the model. I think the residual model is the contingent compensation based off of the performance of the content.
Right.
And so our upfront day rate, it was never intended to be the full payment.
No.
We have an entire milestone model baked in for contingent compensation, which allows entertainment product to be created at a low budget. We're lessening that upfront cost. I don't think there's any actor, at least I've met out on the line, that would say no to you paying the lifetime revenue capture of your work upfront. Right. If somebody wanted to pay me speculatively $10 million for a movie because the movie might earn over time that kind of revenue, sure,
gamble on that.
I will take that check. Let's take that check today. But totally. I understand that that's unsustainable and it creates more diverse offerings in the marketplace. We can bet on bigger bets. And I think that anyone who's produced before has been the beneficiary of that favor, basically, of, okay, I can create something at a lower budget tier with the speculation that it's going to perform over time. And when it performs, I pay, and I get to reuse it a bunch. I get to put it in a bunch of different territories. I come from theater. You got to pay me to show up every night. Right. The idea that you're able to start reusing and remonetizing this content in other places is an incredible gift. And anyone from online community, from the online creator community can tell you the burnout that comes from having to churn new content out all the time. And as someone making TikTok videos right now, which is not my normal practice, I have immense respect for having to put out brand new content. I would love to recycle some of this content and still get paid on it. That'd be great.
We were doing really well on TikTok for a while, but then we just fell apart.
It's exhausting. Exactly.
Sure.
You have to think, who's directing, Lawrence? So, but it's true. So it's like in the server industry, right? We have, if I can remember a time when waitresses, or back when they were called waitresses, would make, $2-3 an hour. And then on top of that would get tips, right? And so if you, you can't just take the tips away and say, but you're only making your $3. And so that model is based on how much business comes into the restaurant and how many tables you have, and which is very similar to like how many people are going to the movies, or is this show going to hit syndication? It's the same. I mean, similar. So I don't know why all of a sudden why, but all of a sudden they were like, hey, let's just change it. Let's just stop paying that.
Of course. Every industry has these nuances of their payment calendars and schedules. And when you just come from the outside, and this I think is a larger part of our conversation today, when you enter an industry from the outside with really no concern for how that industry is structured or the sustainability of that industry, you can poke and pull it. Like, we could all sit around and speculate about how other people should be paid all day, but those models are there for a purpose. And I'll quickly, as an anecdote, I have a friend who's an anesthesiologist, and the way they used to get paid was actually in 2 installments. He used to say, I get paid to put you to sleep and I get paid to wake you up. Right. And if you want to take away my contingent compensation, you can have that conversation with the insurance.
That's fantastic. It's true. Like, that's fantastic. Yes, please, both. I'll take both.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, let's talk AI for a second. So you had a TikTok where you brought up why this is such a hot button issue. Currently, AI can be used for good or evil, depending on who the person is using it, right? And what the use is for it. Why don't you give us the cliff notes of what's going on right now?
You have to separate artificial intelligence from the tool and the culture. And you can use any tool for good or for bad. I mean, you can use a hammer for some pretty bad purposes, or you can hammer in some nails. At the end of the day, though, it's just a query algorithm for large data sets. And so fundamentally, that can be used in an open concept way or a closed concept way. Open is, I'm just going to take all the data from the internet that I've scraped. I have no consent or permission to use that. I've not licensed it. I don't own it in any way. Or it can be a closed system where I'm feeding the exact data that I want because it's for like a medical purpose or research purpose. And I think the potential of that as a tool, we look at that, it's already here. It's in autocorrect on our phones. It's probably transcribing the video that we're doing right now, or the podcast we're doing right now. There's remarkable use cases for this tool, but the culture for some reason takes the position that no one owns their data, which is just fundamentally not true and not sustainable. And when we look, the Copyright Office has already given us guidance on this, that no non-human authored contribution can be copywritten.
Didn't Sarah Silverman didn't she begin something because of her content?
Absolutely. She's been a huge advocate for that because she's been inside these systems for a very long time. She really does love she has a love of new technology, and learning where the tool is versus where the negativity of some of this culture might be. But ultimately, as of last week, there was a federal case that ruled that a piece of artwork that was generated could not be copyrighted because it did not have the human authored contributions, or it was scraping from contributions that were a different human author than the person seeking copyright. And so I guess at the end of the day, if you wanted to copyright the prompt that you type in to the AI, that is human authored, and maybe you can claim that that's yours, kind of in the way that some people copyright a treatment. But that's about as far as you can go. And I like to say that when we think of like AI art specifically, the most impressive stuff that we've seen is coming out of companies like Midjourney. And we're not having a conversation because the founder of Midjourney, David, hand drew everything that got uploaded into Midjourney. We're having a conversation because tens of millions of copyright was stolen, and these tools ultimately could not have been scaled to be a useful tool without immense amounts of copyright infringement and theft. And so there's a huge movement in the art community to, at this current point, say that all AI is theft, because none of these tools currently in the mainstream are void of stolen property. That's not to say that we couldn't make closed systems that don't have stolen property, but currently those aren't the tools we're talking about.
The impact on actors specifically, I mean, I know probably a lot of people listening saw the press conference when announcing the strike, and there was discussion of the offer, and I never saw the offer actually in writing. There was only discussion of it from the AMPTP about the use of AI with actors. And I think it was speaking mostly about background actors. And, you'll still get paid. If we're going to use AI, you'll get paid for the day that you come in and get body scanned. And then we can use that without limitation in perpetuity, our two favorite words, for not just that production, but other productions. At least there was no limitations put upon it to prevent that.
Just use it.
So, and that is just the tip of the iceberg of what is possible. We've seen it grow so fast in the past few years. And, a 3-year contract, if we don't put something in the contract now to provide some protections against that in 3 years, imagine how good these platforms can be and what they can do.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that this early language, even though we didn't see it in writing, we've heard about it. And I don't think that when we look at things like the central casting terms of services that came out this week, right? Like I think that this is very clearly where people think they're going to be able to get away with it. But at the end of the day, we have this temptation to literally reinvent the wheel, to try to bring new contracts, new language, new models every time there's a new technology. But we have decades of standards and practices to rely upon, because our contracts ultimately are just for use and reuse. And there's no production agreement that has ever allowed people to take a recording or a capture or someone's likeness for one production and then reuse it over and over and over again on multiple productions.
Exactly.
And if we're going to take that position, I think that it's a cleaner argument to suggest that your data is actually more valuable in an AI system than it is in a single product. Because if I make one movie, you have one movie. But if you're going to use me in a library for generative AI, my value is unlimited. I have exponential value. So frankly, I should be paid more.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. Just to put it in perspective for those out there in the commercial world, we, in the contracts, like when you hire a SAG actor and you say this is a 60-second commercial, that's it. You cannot edit it into a 30, a 15, a lift, or any of that shit unless you pay for it.
Yeah.
And you get paid more for that. So it's just, you can't, at its purest form, that's it. You can't just use it unless you explain beforehand how you're using it and compensate for it.
Well, and I love that you've brought up the commercial contract, because I think that might give us a tool for the future for everybody that actually works for everybody in some ways. Because when we look at whether it's AI or whether it's digital streaming media, where they host it on these big content subscription libraries and people watch it at different rates. The commercial contract allows a upfront day rate for doing the work, for capturing the content. Great, fantastic. Then every quarter, you've got a holding fee.
Yeah.
You're basically saying, we would like to continue using this content as in our library. We'd like the opportunity to still hold the rights for this. And then when you use it, it triggers a fee. And I certainly think it could be pretty compelling to say you get paid to do the work. There's a holding fee for as long as you want to keep me in either the AI or in the the subscription library. And that could be tethered to when you do your shareholder reports and tell them how well everything's going. You can decide to renew our contracts for another 13 weeks. And then when something is created or generated or watched or aired or exhibited or whatever the correct verb is for the particular platform, it draws a fee. And that would allow milestone payments based off of our past to be future-proof.
I know it sounds complex, but it really is that simple. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, exactly what you said. We did reinvent the wheel by creating a contract called New Media when things started going on the internet, because there was no, there's no way we're going to make money on this. We're just going to put it on the internet to see what
Billions
happens.
later.
Now, what we used to call broadcast, TV over the airwaves, that's the dinosaur. Right now, broadcast is streaming. That is what it shifted to. So, and streaming, a lot of streaming, especially in commercials, still work under the New Media contract, which means no residuals. You can negotiate rates and all these kind of
crap.
Rules and requirements are lifted. That is what needs to be figured out is, the model's changed, but the same systems of payment can still be applied and we can still figure that out. Christian, I just got a calendar for a job, and the timeline is totally crazy. It's so short. Like, how do you stay organized during prep when these timelines are truncated like that?
There is so much to think about and no room for error.
None.
And to be honest, sometimes stuff falls through the cracks. I don't know. Have you ever bolted awake at 2 a.m. and screamed, Humane Society?
Oh, my God.
Or even like, oh, the caterer.
Oh, my God. The director wants fog and I didn't put it on the friggin' permit. Oh, it's insane. What gets me through these jobs, though, and even just my daily life, is checklists. I'm obsessed with checklists. That's the only way I can stay organized.
Even though we've been doing this for years, a solid checklist is super useful.
Yeah, even seasoned commercial pilots, like airline pilots who've been doing this for 25 years, use checklists for the most basic things. That's how important they are.
I'd like to think that my job is way more important than a pilot's job, but whatever. So we did a thing and made a new pre-production checklist. This one is built for contemporary filmmaking methods, and, it's also geared towards the way we're expected to work these days.
Yeah, which is crazy fast. So don't let anything slip through the cracks. Get the pre-production checklist. There's a link in our show notes where you can grab it, or you can just find it on our website, producershappyhour.com.
Go get it!
The other thing I want to kind of come back to was the central casting thing, because I wanted to talk about that. This came out just a few days before today, when we're recording this podcast. And for those of you who have not yet seen it, it was some sort of email that was stating that by being signed to central casting, maybe you needed a second signature. I don't really know those details, but basically any imagery, any recordings of you, anything that is submitted to central casting can be used by central casting and reused by central casting in perpetuity without limits. So obviously AI is on everybody's brain right now, and who knows what the intention behind this release was. But my goodness, if there are any actors or performers or anybody listening, if anybody wants your unlimited use of your image and likeness, do not sign that until you know more details about that. So that's some sort of debate ongoing. Maybe by the time this airs, that will be kind of figured out. But do you have any more insight into that?
I do, and it excites me, honestly. I'm so excited by this particular piece of news because in many ways what we're witnessing, if you complement this with the Zoom terms and services that came out last month.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just about to say that. Fuck Zoom.
We're seeing these companies that are deciding if they can sneak new language into their terms of service, that any active user just becomes owned by them, that privacy data just becomes theirs. And there's two core issues with that. First, no. But when we look at, for example, what the SAG-Aftra and WGA are arguing for with AI protections, with new media protections, with residual models, with all of this, we are just at the front lines of what every active user of the internet is about to confront over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
And it is incredibly important that we are all united as users in the world, as humans in the world, that our data is our data. And Jared Lanier talks about this with data dignity, of the idea that people should inherently own their data. And every single time it is used, they should have consent, they should have compensation, and they should have credit. Now, if some of these companies wanted to start funding our internet or our phone bills or sustaining our lives, I could see a path towards UBI even using these models. If you want to start talking about the valuable exchange of IP and privacy data. The other part, though, is that federally, it's not allowed. In 30 states in the United States, you own your likeness, you own your copyright. You have to barter for that in good faith in a fair contract. And it has to be consensual to the terms and territory of that contract. So I'm not even sure that legally I can click a little button or an accept and have opted into overturning federal rights.
Right.
That's not, and so I think that we're going to see some very interesting legal cases regarding what the federal protections are going to be. And based off of that copyright news that just came through, I think the federal government is going to stick behind, again, decades of standards and practices and not just go, let's just reinvent it all.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Jesus.
I mean, the majority of them don't understand what we're speaking about, but sure, let's trust them to do that. Why? Well, I'm fascinated by this next thing. I'm not sure if it's a question or not, just maybe something to discuss. But Justine Bateman's predictions of future use of AI and customized content on demand. And I know listeners, your faithful listeners, have heard me mention Bruce Willis a gazillion times, or The Irishman, or just any of that. I mean,
and that's just the beginning. That is
just the fucking beginning.
The tip of the iceberg.
I know.
Yeah.
And so it fascinates me because I disagree. I mean, it's just so out there as a concept to have personalized movies made with, pick 3 actors and go for it. So how do you feel about that, Brendan?
Well, what I think it's a complicated answer, and it's not meant to be a non-answer. But I first played with AI in 2021 during the GPT-3 open beta,
right?
And I actually produced the first play written by AI. And I'm going to tell you, it felt cool to watch the playwright develop that in chorus with a machine on demand. I mean, we could tell what some of its references it was pulling from, so it wasn't his work, which was then complicated and weird. And then I performed in virtual reality with the audience spawning the world around me while I sang using prompts and pulling that from DALL-E AI. And so there is remarkable application for this work. And I understand the idea of content on demand generating a story. I think the novelty of that is very interesting. I think we could reach a place that could be a compelling tool, or parts of that could be a compelling tool. I think it'd be very cool to upload every draft of every screenplay I've ever written into a closed circuit that no one else could generate from, and basically co-write with myself in flow. Like, that's very exciting. But I also think we have to get to the crux of, and this is, I think, the core thesis of a lot of what's coming out from the strike and the negotiations. We are dealing with entertainment partners or conglomerates that aren't actually in the movie business.
Right.
They don't actually make movies. Movies are content, this lovely C word, is a loss leader for a platform or to sell other products or to sell server space.
Subscriptions, yes.
Exactly. And so we have to really then get back to, what are movies for? What are stories for? And I think personally, as an independent artist, and as someone who's been a part of very big projects and very niche projects, let's look at what's happened over the last 10 to 15 years for some good guidance on what might be true in the future. With unlimited creative tools that we're all putting out there constantly on demand for anyone to watch, we aren't so enamored with just the creation. Art is inherently a dialogue between an artist and the audience. And without that audience component, we don't actually have the full promise or conclusion of art. And I think that fundamentally, part of the creation is the fact that water cooler moment. The reason a show becomes a hit show is because other people watch it. The communal. Look at Barbieheimer. You can't manufacture that.
I fucking love that.
Yeah.
So if I create content on demand for me because I'm going to be on a train ride and I want to watch a Bruce Willis movie that I generated for the ride with Liam, exactly.
And they're taking everybody. I got it. Go on.
Yeah.
Go.
Took it.
Yeah. Took it.
I'm not inherently in dialogue with the artist because the artist didn't actually create that for me thoughtfully. So this wasn't their work made and crafted. I'm not experiencing the craft of storytelling at any level, but I'm also not sharing it with anybody else. I might share it with the person next to me, maybe, but from a humanity perspective of collective catharsis, we're missing the key ingredients. We love to talk about, for thousands of years, we've gathered around the campfire to tell stories. But the fucking reason we did that was to be together, to gather.
Right.
And Priya Parker will tell us that requires intentionality. And when you take the intentionality out of it, I think you lose the purpose of storytelling. And so no matter what you can generate on demand, I have optimism, at least at the end of the day, that we're going to want to do it collaboratively with other people. And right now, those other people are on the streets fighting for basic rights. So if you're on the side of storytelling, get out on the fucking street.
I'm done. Yes, 100%. Because as you were talking, I was thinking, would I watch on Twitch somebody else's film with Liam Neeson and Bruce Willis who just was making up shit? No, I wouldn't.
No.
So you're right.
These models are scraping previously created work. And the thing that makes movies really shine is someone's very specific, unique perspective on an experience. Yeah. And what these regenerative models or generative models are doing is just rehashing old perspectives, maybe in a new combination that sounds interesting. Right. I never thought about, this type of animal on this type of environment with this type of lighting, but it's all lighting that's been done before.
Exactly.
Yeah, using this adverb, so at some point, it is a dead end without new ideas and new perspectives being installed into it.
Yes, and I think that's where we look at the central casting, the zoom, all this danger of they're going to keep needing new data.
Right,
and they're going to keep needing to feed it. And it's going to be yours.
Exactly.
It's going to be yours next.
It is.
And if you want to help Microsoft make $1 trillion tool that you don't participate in, I guess you can opt into that. But I don't think that the majority of humans want to do that. Also, listen to the customers. The number one talking point that I hear from my trolls on my TikToks and Instagram videos.
Oh, you have fans?
Well, y'all... Yo, I've got some big fans.
Well, let's compare trolls. Later.
What I've always loved about internet trolls, literally from the beginning of YouTube, because I've had them for a long time, is they come back every day. I'm like, dude, thanks for the engagement, bruh. You're really helping my algorithm, actually. This is a gift. Keep on coming back.
Yeah.
But the argument is like, well, y'all haven't made anything good in 15 years and it's all crap and yada, yada. And I'm going, what do you think the AI is going to do? If you don't like repetitive, regurgitated stuff, that's what the AI is going to do. And look at Barbie. $1 billion in 17 days because we wanted to see what Greta would do with fucking Mattel.
Yeah, right.
Seeing a unique artist bring a unique vision to something we thought we'd already figured out, we thought we'd already seen. That should teach us the lesson, and every studio executive should be listening. Right. We don't want the regurgitation. We don't want to be able to predictively query what's going to happen next. By Act 3, I felt like I watched that movie. Act 1, it was this gift of like, here you go, Mattel. I did the assignment. Here's my homework. And then Act 2 and 3, I was in the hands of an artist that I didn't know where she was going to take me.
Yeah.
And I was there for the ride.
Totally.
And I want to go to every movie like that.
And that was a project, a script that went around the studio system. Nobody knew what to do with it because it wasn't a superhero movie. It wasn't this. It wasn't that. It didn't fit the mold.
It wasn't Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
and look at what happened. Like somebody finally made it happen, and you get something like that. Some unique perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's commercially profitable. Like, what do you want? You can have art and commerce?
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
I was listening to some podcast or some story about how the studios were developed by a filmmaking and artist community. I mean, even the heads of the studios at some point were invested in storytelling and filmmaking, and they knew how to put components together and what actors to get. And they could see potential in writers, and they could see potential in young stars, and they could create these cauldrons of creativity where masterpieces came from. Now they're tech companies. And that's it.
Yeah, they
right?
stream. Yeah.
It's streaming companies and tech companies, and that's how they perceive. A friend of mine, one of those early days, started working at, I don't know if it was Netflix or Amazon or one of the many other places, and we made movies together, right? We made Memento and all these other films, and she's like, "It's not a studio; it's a tech company. It's a startup." And I couldn't understand how a studio would function like that, but now we're learning what exactly
it took
that
20
means.
short years, and here we are.
20 short years. Well, I think that in entertainment, the entertainment was the product, and now the company itself is the product. This valuation of a company, that's all that matters, is that valuation. But
Stock prices,
then it's ultimately
quarterly stocks.
Yes,
That's it.
yes.
I know.
But then it's not putting out any products into the world. And at the end of the day, when it comes to whether it's subscription or valuation or what have you, what I like to say is, first of all, we have more in common with our peers on the other side of the gates that were outside picketing, because they are filmmakers, creators, executives. They like telling stories. They want to make entertainment product. But also, if Americans can't make a living making American products, I don't know who they think is going to buy American products.
Yeah, exactly.
So then that stock price will eventually go down.
Well, maybe that's what needs to happen for something major to shift in this
Are we
system.
talking about capitalism, guys?
Oh, don't get me started.
Well, but is this capitalism?
Well,
the rooting out of the middle class and the maximizing of profits and the destruction of the environment. Don't get me started.
I heard a podcast on it.
That's a different podcast. Hey, Brendan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
We really appreciate your insight and all the
great.
work you're doing on the front lines. This was a really great conversation. I think one thing that I would love to hear from you is going back to being a jobber, that working class actor. What is the most important thing about this strike? You want our listeners to know, and know that our listeners are film production people, directors, writers,
Actors.
hopefuls, actors. What's the most important thing about this moment in time you want them to know?
This is a check-in for the whole community. I'm a producer as well. I'm a director as well. I'm a writer as well. We are all in a marriage together of combined you called it a cauldron of creativity, right? That is it is a line in the sand, a moment in history of, do you believe in making storytelling or do you not? Are you on team stories and movies and TV shows, or are you on team something else? And that's just a personal decision everybody gets to make. But I think that as a jobber, I'm not vying to be the lead. I'm not vying to have all the control or all the money or all the power. I'm looking to be literally just a part of the story.
The support.
Yeah.
The support. And to make a living doing it. And in a lot of ways, we are all investing in the future of not just each independent story that we make, but of the entire industry and the economy of that industry. And I think that what we're really trying to do is make sure that there's a future, not just for ourselves over the next few decades, but of the entire craft and medium for the future to come.
Yeah. The
So
people
for
coming up
me,
behind us.
Everything.
And everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why it's been standard for as long as it has been, is because it was fair and it was an equitable way to pay people, and that just got blown out of the water with new media. Thank you again so much for your time. Brendan, how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to?
I am Brendan A. Bradley, all of the places. So if you go to any social media platform, that is how you will find me, Brendan A. Bradley.
Amazing. So, Sister Christian, how do people get a hold of you if they want you?
SisterChristianProduces.com. And Lawrence, if they want you, how are they going to get you?
2 ways, LaurенceTLewis.com. I don't even know. LawrenceTLewis.com and voiceoflawrence.com. Thanks again, Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Producers Happy Hour is brought to you with the help of the handsome Christopher Daniels,
who is a design and branding specialist,
and Brendan Russell at podlad.com, who is our fabulous editor.
If you enjoy this podcast and want to dive deeper, subscribe to our listeners' newsletter. Simply go to producershappyhour.com to sign up.
Thanks for listening, and remember,
enjoy happy hour while you can.
because making shit is hard.